Welcome to the Melinda Show. I'm Melinda. Today we have with us an old friend of mine who is an excellent financial professional, David Brunson.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Well,
I'm
it's
so
great to
glad
be
you're
here. Yes.
So you've done many financial things in your life.
Absolutely.
The one that has helped me is you've been a neutral financial in collaborative cases.
Correct. You and I have worked on dozens and dozens of collaborative cases over the decades, probably, right?
Yes.
We've known each other a long time.
Yes.
As your audience knows, you are awesome. So you're great to work with. And obviously the idea behind a collaborative divorce is it's a different way to divorce than a traditional, what we would call litigation model. Not that there's anything wrong with the litigation model, but collaborative is different.
Yes.
And as a financial neutral that the attorneys and clients bring in, I'm able to help a lot of people in a much more, I think, peaceful, problem-solving way.
The clients love you,
Thank you.
so that helps.
It helps. It helps being neutral. Helps not being the opposing attorney.
Right.
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 And I think the main thing in terms of there's a, I guess I would call it a power of neutrality that is brought to bear because we bring in a financial neutral, whether it's me or someone else, and we bring in a mental health neutral that helps with many of the emotions and also parenting plan issues and things that are extremely valuable to the process. So
I agree with the power of neutrality. When I'm explaining to my client, hey, we're going to have these neutrals,
yes,
one of the things I explain to them is if David says it, it is accepted.
yes,
If I say it or my client says it, the other client meets it with a little bit of suspicion, maybe.
yeah, just a little. I call it, and if we're talking about the spouses who are the ones who ultimately have to decide, I call it the marriage discount. I've been married for 43 years, right? And my wonderful wife doesn't listen to anything that I say.
That's
right?
not true.
'Cause we've been, well, part of it is you're married so long, you know them so well.
Yes.
That if you say something, they're like, okay.
She's heard it before.
She's heard it before. But then somebody else comes in and says the exact same thing. It's like, oh, what a great idea. Well, didn't I just say that? Yes, but
Right.
But it's you, right? So
And it's worse when they're going through a divorce.
it's absolutely worse because emotions are high, right?
Trust is low.
Trust is very low. I mean, divorce is one of the top 5 stressors that people can have in their lives, right? So to bring a neutral voice into the process, they still get to ultimately vote on what they want their divorce to look like, but to have a neutral come in and give them education and information is incredibly valuable. Information and education that their attorney may not be trained for, even though people like you have lots of financial experience, but still to have a financial person come in and talk about financial things that they've done for years in a divorce setting, I think can be very helpful.
So explain your role more. Like some people have a misunderstanding. They think you're going to come in and say, this is how you're divorcing financially.
Great question. So the process is pretty much we follow a roadmap in collaborative, and I call it kind of a classic problem-solving roadmap, right? Because problem solving is really important to me because when I came out of college, I came out as an engineer. I had undergraduate engineering from Texas Tech, and we were taught to problem solve. Everything we did was problems. Solve this problem, solve that problem, right? That's how we were trained. So when you go into collaborative, we have a roadmap that's built that way. And the way the roadmap works is we start with people's goals. Hey, where are we trying to get to, right?
Right.
Which
That's important to know.
Yeah, which a lot of times people don't know, right? They're in stress, they're under stress.
Yes.
They're emotional, it's difficult. They may be low on the divorce readiness scale, they may be high. I mean, it's just a very emotional time period. And so understanding their goals is very important because that's kind of where we're going to point. My role then is I'm a collector of the financial data, the financial information. In a typical case, you're going to have both attorneys collecting information from their clients and maybe not communicating very well with each other. And many times they're asking for information that maybe I would not ask for. Like, for example, if people are going to collaborate and they want to be in this process, they've agreed to be transparent and honest in everything they do. So there's an assumption that this is a safe environment where people can trust that they're going to provide all, for example, the financial documents that we need. So I collect that financial information, those financial documents, in a very neutral way to understand what does your financial estate, for lack of a better term, look like, right? And for many people, that's the first time they've really looked at their financial estate maybe in ever, right?
Especially if that wasn't their role in the marriage.
Correct.
And sometimes I have a client that's really embarrassed. They say, I didn't know anything about our holdings, or that was kind of his job or her job. And I try to normalize for them, that's the benefit of marriage. One person takes charge of some things and the other person takes charge. So it's not it's not, they don't need to be embarrassed, but the truth is they may not know.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that they can't figure it out. They're not smart enough to do it. It's just not been what they've been interested in or dealt with in their marriage. And they've relied on the other person, their more greater interest or greater talent in that area. They've leveraged off of that, just like maybe the other spouse has other talents that they use. So yes. So a big part of it is collecting information in a neutral way and helping educate the client so that they're on a level playing field once they start deciding, well, what does this mean, right? What does this mean, these assets and these liabilities? What does it mean to me going forward after the divorce is over, right? So that's the first thing we do is gather information and educate in that data gathering process. And then based on people's goals, right? And based on what they're trying to achieve financially. And of course, there's other things, right? In the financial part is, hey, we've got 3 children, right?
They might need to have some money spent on them.
They might need some money spent on them. And so therefore, if we're going to have 2 households after divorce, what is that going to look like, not only for us, but for our kids? Where are they going to go to school? How are we going to pay for just the basic necessities of our children? How are we going to pay for all of the extras that people talk about, which is for a lot of people is very expensive, right?
Yeah, the travel teams,
Yes.
It's really expensive to have a very talented child.
It's very expensive.
Then they're on the best teams, and the teams are expensive, and they're traveling around the country to play their sport. Yeah,
that's right.
It's better to have an average child.
That's right. That goes to public school. But
play some sports through the YMCA.
That's right. So, but that's another thing people need to understand is that, the children need to be supported and because a lot of times a big financial goal that people have is obviously, hey, we want to take care of the kids. We want to have least disruption as possible in the children, emotionally, financially, and otherwise going forward. So, and that can be very challenging because you're taking for lack of a better term, a pot of assets and liabilities, a pot of money, and we're dividing it in some way, right? The other thing that we obviously have to understand is there's one thing to look at the assets and liabilities, but there's another thing to look at, well, what is the ongoing cash or cash flow that we have to support the family, right? Where does spouse 1 work? Where does spouse 2 work? Do they work, or are they fulfilling a different role in the family? So that's also obviously important as well.
And you gather all this and put it on a spreadsheet.
Put it on a spreadsheet, and for those that have math anxiety or financial anxiety, the great thing about the collaborative process is we go at the speed that we need to go to make sure everybody is educated. Because if people are confused, a confused mind always says no.
I quote you. I say David Brunson told me.
And
a confused mind says no.
And it's very true. Right?
Yes.
Until we understand and know how it's going to work. Now, we may still say no for other reasons, but it won't be because we don't understand and we don't get it, right? So part of my role is to educate and help people feel comfortable and basically empower them to make better decisions for themselves financially, because it's like this is a big leap off point and a transition point in their lives, divorce.
Yes.
Right? That's a big transition point for people. So they need to understand what am I going to get in the divorce possibly? What is my cash flow going to look like? What am I going to be responsible for in terms of expenses for my kids? And so once the clients understand that and they're no longer confused, then we start talking about, well, what are all the different options that people can consider in settling their divorce? Not only from a legal perspective, which obviously is very important because it's a legal process at the end of the day, but it also is emotional and it's also financial. So it's like the three-legged stool, which is why we have attorneys, obviously, but also why we have mental health neutrals that come in and also financial neutrals that come in. So it doesn't mean that the process is still not a divorce process and that it's easy. I've been on many cases.
It's not always easy.
Not always easy.
I promise.
Very difficult cases that we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, what you're hoping to achieve is, once again, creating a process and the finality of a process that is much better than anything they would have done otherwise, and therefore plant better seeds in going forward so these families can continue to be families in the future, because even though they might not be married, they still are families.
Yes. That's what's great about collaborative, is it allows them to be their higher selves.
Yes.
Instead of in the dirt, throwing the dirt, their worst selves.
Yes.
And on the education front, one thing I have learned just by being around you and people like you is every asset has a different dimension, and some of them can be divided in a divorce without any tax effect between spouses.
Yes.
Some cannot, and we need to understand that, because that's one that we're going to leave with one spouse, and then we would offset it with a different asset.
Yes. So part of the process when we get into those discussions about, well, how do we divide things? How do we end up dividing this estate ultimately? Is there's more questions and more education and more details that need to be talked about in terms of, well, how are taxes affected if we divide this? If we move this asset like an IRA that's never been taxed to me, is there a tax impact, or what should I expect in the future in terms of taxes? Because obviously $10,000 in a cash account is different than $10,000 in an IRA that's never been taxed.
Right.
If you have a business that needs to be valued, right? Well, how do we approach that value? And that's a whole nother education process in terms of valuing different kinds of assets. And we run across all types of assets that we have to talk about how do we value things. We also run across things like community and separate property, which is where we run into the law. What does the law say? What is community property in Texas? What is separate property in Texas? So many times we're called to talk about those things and educate people about those things, which you obviously have to do as well from a legal perspective. So it's great to have a team that is working for a goal that the clients have, which normally in this is, look, we want an efficient process, right?
Yes.
We want an effective process, but we want a process that meets our goals as best we can as well.
One thing that I hear a lot from clients and potential clients is, I'm worried that he or she hid a bunch of money, because trust is low, right? They trusted in their marriage, but all of a sudden something happened to cause them to want a divorce maybe, and to say, oh, I don't know if I can trust them anymore.
Yes.
And so maybe they hid a bunch of money, and what do we do if they don't tell you about all these hidden accounts?
Yes.
So how do we handle that?
It's a great question. It's not an easy answer, but it's a great question. So the issue of hidden assets purely from a process standpoint, we try to drill down and understand specifically where the mistrust comes from. But there are a number of ways as we collect information when we know, hey, we think people are hiding assets. There's a number of ways that we can identify, are we missing assets, right? We can look at bank accounts and see transactions maybe that happen between bank accounts. We can look at tax returns. That's a good way to look and figure out, well, where has money maybe been coming in from certain accounts that maybe one spouse who's not involved in doing the taxes would have know nothing about, but shows up in a 1099 on the tax return and so forth. And then part of it is just the agreement in a collaborative setting that we're going to we're going to adhere to this code of conduct, right? We're going to be transparent. We're going to make sure we're truthful and honest and provide all the information. And so the neutrals can be helpful because they can identify any red flags that they see when they're going through documents. Now, sometimes that still doesn't satisfy the client, right? And then in that case, what we can do is literally bring in a forensic specialist, a forensic accountant, for example, and create a project, a scope that they can go analyze certain things that they may be looking for. I will say that one of the biggest things and problems I see in this area of hidden assets is normally it's coming from their well-intentioned friends and family who have been through maybe a litigation divorce, a very difficult scorched earth divorce, and that was an issue in those processes, because in litigation there is some hide the ball just in terms of the process itself. So I think in general, I try to get people and try to understand where they're coming from in terms of why is this a concern. And many times it's not their concern necessarily. It may be a concern of the people around them. Because sometimes people cannot be trusted in their personal lives, but they can be very trusted in their business lives.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's not the same.
I
right?
agree. That's been my experience.
It's not the same, right?
I've been doing this 31 years.
Yes.
And I would say most of the time, people are not hiding money. I mean, sure, are they putting $200 in their pocket and not telling you?
Yes.
Yes, they are doing that. Are they buying a ridiculously expensive dinner that maybe they shouldn't buy? Yes, they're doing that. But are there a bunch of accounts with hundreds of thousands of dollars in them? Usually no.
No.
And it's very hard to do it unless you're paid in cash and you stuck the cash in the floor.
Yes.
There's going to be a trail.
Absolutely.
So usually I tell people, don't worry about that. We'll see a red flag.
We will. And then when you see a red flag, then we ask for more information. We start to drill down, right? And then I think what people realize is I tell clients from time to time, we can do this in collaborative and get this information. That's the easy way. If you would like to do it the hard way, you can.
That's available.
That's available. You can terminate the collaborative process, go litigate, and I promise you, you will not enjoy that experience. And some people choose to do that, right? I would say that's rare, but some people may choose to do that. So I think from a standpoint of a process in divorce, once again, divorce is difficult, it's challenging, but I'm a big believer in the collaborative process.
One thing that's great about your role is if there is an imbalance of either education and sophistication financially, your role helps to even that out. Or if there's an imbalance in power, or the history of this couple is one person just always leans over and convinces the other person what to do.
Yes.
Strong arms them. You're kind of a protection against that.
Yeah, so one of the things I do early in the process is I meet individually with the clients just to kind of get to know them. And normally I can identify those power imbalances fairly quickly, right? Because I've been told that from the attorneys. We've already had a meeting with the attorneys and they tell me about their clients and what's going on. And so if there is that power imbalance, that's very useful to know, because then what I can do is go to the spouse that is maybe the power over spouse.
Yes.
Right? And tell that spouse that you've been dropped on divorce island, right? This is a different world than you're used to operating in with your spouse. And in order for you to get divorced, your spouse now has a voice. We're going to educate them. They're going to understand what financially, from the financial perspective and other perspectives, because you're obviously educating your client from a legal perspective. They're going to have a voice. They're going to understand. And you know what else they're going to have? A vote. And do I get raised eyebrows when I tell people your spouse suddenly has a voice and a vote, right? And we're going to help them. This process is going to help them find that voice and vote, right? Now, people that understand even smart people, really smart people, which we deal with, and most our clients are smart people, right? They get that. They don't like it, but they get it, right?
And then we're like, back off a little.
That's right, because they're pushing, they're saying, hey, I've already got this all figured out, which is where the marriage discount comes in. The answer is no. And so it's really a process where you don't really know how each case is different, right? And so the team can adjust the process to slow down, to speed up, to educate more, to take a break. You know, sometimes people are struggling, right? Sometimes people have to stop the process and go take care of some issue they're dealing with. We can do that. There's lots of things where the clients are in charge of the process, but we're in charge of the outcome of the process, but the team's there to help guide them and facilitate them through this, I would say, pretty structured process, which is what they need when you're going through a divorce.
Yes. So you are president-elect of our statewide organization,
Yes.
Collaborative Divorce Texas.
Collaborative Divorce Texas, a group of very hardworking interdisciplinary teams there are attorneys on the boards from all over the state, mental health neutrals, financial neutrals. I'll be president next year, and we have a wonderful group of professionals throughout the state. Folks can go on there and learn about collaborative divorce. They can check out different professionals within their area. They can call me, and I'll be happy to give them thoughts about things I see as a neutral in divorce cases and why collaborative is such a great thing. But you can go to the Collaborative Divorce Texas website and just Google Collaborative Divorce Texas, and you can find us. And it's a little like herding cats, but
But you're in for it.
We're in for it. We're a passionate group. We believe in collaborative. We have wonderful people in that group. We have people we have a credentialing process. You're mastered credentialed.
I'm master credentialed, first class.
First class.
First class.
I was not first class, but I was behind you, but I made it. So we're master credentialed.
You could have been first class. It was challenging to qualify for the first class because you didn't know what the qualifications were ahead of time to plan.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So it was more of a struggle to gather it all. But I do value my credential very much.
It's
There's not very many people with our credential.
No. It's a wonderful organization. We love people to be credentialed. We love people to join. We want their ideas. We want their passion. We want their energy. Because we want collaborative to be the preferred way people do divorce in Texas, if it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for all cases, right? It doesn't. But at least people that are considering divorce should be talking to their attorneys about that option when they talk to their attorneys.
I agree. So if a professional was watching and they thought, I want to get trained. I want to
Yes.
be one of these professionals.
Yes,
We provide training at Collaborative Divorce Texas.
we do. There's actually a training in Houston in April, coming up in April. I believe it's 23rd, 24th, 25th. I may not be right on that, but
It's on the
there's so
website,
many dates. It's on the
hopefully.
website. And then in September, the Dallas training group will be training in Dallas. And the great Melinda Eidson, David Brunson,
We're on the training team.
we're on the training team.
We're here to train.
That's right. And last year when we trained, I think we had 45 or 50 professionals, attorneys, mental health professionals, financial professionals come and learn about collaborative. Even if you don't become a neutral working in this area, or an attorney that actually ends up doing a lot of collaborative, it's a wonderful training process. It's a wonderful way to meet people and understand a different way to do collaborative, which, by the way, collaborative came to Texas about 2000, I believe. The attorneys started using financial neutrals, such smart people, in about 2003, 2004. I think I did my first case about 03, 04 when we were trained. And I have worked with so many great people and really stand on the shoulders of a lot of giants ahead of me that started this process in Texas. And it's a wonderful group, and we hope people will check us out.
I agree. So it's all over the country. It's all over the world.
Yes, there's in most of the states have passed the Collaborative Uniform Act, I think you would call it, 100 attorneys.
You said it right.
Yep, and Texas is one of those. And many states do collaborative. Many states use collaborative interdisciplinary teams to do that. Some put different flavors on it. But in Texas, we use collaborative teams. There's an international association of collaborative professionals that tries to spread this idea of collaborative throughout the world, right? So people do this throughout the world. And I think what's exciting about it, long after we're gone, is collaborative. The process doesn't just have to be in family law. There's a lot of other areas. I'm an old-time financial advisor, so advising clients, you run into, for example, estate issues, right? Probate issues. That's a perfect area that collaborative. Any place there's conflict. There's a role for being more collaborative rather than.
And especially if the relationship matters.
Yes.
Right? So for people who are divorcing, they love this person once. They might have children with this person. They're going to have to continue in relationship. So if the relationship matters, if it were a partnership breaking up, that relationship might matter to them.
Yes.
You know, if it's a vendor purchaser relationship, that relationship matters, but they could still have a dispute they need resolution for.
Yes. So it's a way to create a safe environment so people can resolve their disputes, and divorce being one of the most gut-wrenching disputes that people will probably ever go through on a personal level, but to do it in a way that preserves the relationship as best can be preserved, right? It's up to them, obviously. We're not there to fix what their problem was or fix them going forward, but we can help the process of their separation and divorce not be the reason that their relationship gets worse in the future.
Right. Well, you're a great teacher. That shows up both in the training, which I've had the pleasure of training with you, but also in the cases, because part of your role is teaching.
Yes, and I was fortunate to teach. I taught at the SMU in their graduate dispute resolution program for about 10 years. So that was enjoyable.
You've had some experience.
I've had some experience in teaching, but that's what really collaborative is, right? You're teaching them about legal. The mental health neutral is teaching them about family, about emotions, about how to handle family issues as you go through this and beyond. I'm helping them maybe educate them about financial issues for the very first time and looking at the reality of what they're facing, good or bad going forward. And I think that's empowering to people. That they're able then to get their voice.
And make a good decision.
Right? Make a good decision, even though the outcome is not what they originally intended when they got married.
Right.
But it creates hopefully a better outcome for them and plants good seeds going forward.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I love working with you. It's so great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Well, you're the best, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Melinda Eitzen Show. Please watch again. If you have any feedback for us or anything you'd like to hear us talk about, let us know at melinda@d-elaw.com. Thank you for listening.